let's go ahead and talk again about that autoflow. So autoflow is the same as auto mode on the servo or VSync on the Avia, and it works exactly the same. So when we go into auto mode, we can go ahead and go up to our ventilator settings, click on additional settings, and we can just turn our autoflow on that way. We are essentially going to make this volume control mode be PRVC. So the ventilator is going to give a volume breath, measure the plateau pressure, and then deliver pressure controlled breaths after that. With those pressure controlled breaths, the ventilator is going to adjust its pressure control by increments of 3 centimeters of water pressure each breath until it achieves our targeted tidal volume, which is 450. So it may take a couple breaths for the ventilator to level out our peak pressure and our plateau pressure, and our tidal volume, but it will get us to the 450 targeted tidal volume and be a pressure controlled mode. So if we were to turn autoflow on, we can see we had a volume breath. Oh, there's our volume breath. And now we will see that we're going to have a pressure control breath. So we see our flow waveform is now in a peak and not flattened like it was. So we gave that one volume breath, and now we're giving pressure breaths, and our tidal volume is honing in on that 450. So what happens if we change our compliance? If our compliance decreases from 40 to 20, what would we expect to happen? Well, just like the other ventilators, we are going to expect a drop in our tidal volume because we're now in a pressure-controlled mode, and we will see the ventilator deliver that volume breath to measure where we are, and it will then adjust its pressure-controlled breaths to get us back up to that 450 volume target. So we will see a dip in our tidal volume and an increase in our peak pressures prior to adjusting back to where it's giving us what we want on our tidal volume. So let's go ahead and see that. So you see our tidal volumes decreased, our peak pressures have increased, and the ventilator is slowly increasing those peak pressures by increments of 3 centimeters of water pressure to get us back up to our targeted tidal volume. So what happens if our compliance increases? What is going to happen? So just the opposite. If our compliance increases, we're going to see an increase in our tidal volume and a decrease in our peak pressures until the ventilator gives that volume breath, reads it, and adjusts its pressure control to give us the correct tidal volume, which is 450 in this case. So let's go ahead and see it. So there's your volume breath. And now we see pressure control breath. So we have a big tidal volume, a lower peak pressure, and that tidal volume is coming down because the ventilator is adjusting its pressure control to get us back to our 450. And there we are. So changes in compliance. When you are in a volume mode with autoflow enabled, you are going to see the changes in volume and the changes in your peak pressure with the ventilator reading that first breath after the change as a volume breath.